Hello everybody, Mark Schaftlein with you, and this is the Schaftlein Report, Thursday's edition, broadcasting from foggy Irvine, California today. Sun's breaking out, happy to have you with us. Hey Gary Demar, welcome back to Schaftlein Report after a couple week absence. Glad to have you with us today.
Good to be back.
Hey Gary, there's a lot going on right now all across the country, but let me start with something that, I'm sort of going to categorize things today. There's some news coming out about the effect Americans are feeling on this inflation front. And boy, we've been talking about it on the show for the past couple months. The Fed seems to be realizing it now, but about 45 to 50% of Americans are really feeling it in the pocketbook. And they're actually experiencing hardships between the gas station and the grocery store.
Yeah, and of course the press and the Biden administration are kind of dismissing the idea of inflation, and now with the Fed coming in here, we're going to try to fix inflation by possibly raising interest rates. They just don't understand the basics of economics. That inflation the definition of inflation is the increase in the money supply. That's the standard definition of inflation. And higher prices are the result of inflation. And so what we have in our society today, of course, is the government just keep pushing more and more money into the economy. And then more and more people, with money staying home. It's a volatile mix here where now we're beginning to see shortages taking place. You've got the supply chain issue. When you have a shortage of commodities, of course, the existing commodities go up in price because of the demand is still there. Now, this is a problem created by government. Now the government wants to come in and fix the problem that they created in the first place.
Hey, Gary, too many dollars chasing too few goods, classic definition. And again, what the Biden administration doesn't seem to realize, maybe they do, they just won't want to admit it, is that this is like a tax on the poor and the middle class. I mean, Democrats claim to want to represent that group of people. They're rapidly moving to the Republican Party. And it just doesn't seem like, that their heads are with it because, the Fed is finally starting to recognize it. They're going to take the initial step of slowing these bond purchases, hopefully sooner rather than later at their December meeting. But boy, if they don't get their arms around this pretty fast, supply chain or no supply chain, we recognize there's disruptions. There's going to be political hell to pay for this come 2022.
Yeah, and this is the thing. I've heard a number of leftist commentators talk about, this is a rich person's complaint. And yet you make the point that the people who really suffer the most from higher prices are the middle class and the poor. They don't have a way to adjust as much. Some people, my wife and I, we can make adjustments, but a lot of people are living on the edge. They're living from paycheck to paycheck. And then this is coming right at the Christmas season, and they'd like to celebrate Christmas. And they're going to have to make some choices. They're going to have to make some food choices, transportation choices. They may not travel because of higher gas prices. And you're right. This is an effect on a kind of diminishing constituents, people who may be making a shift in their choices of political affiliation, come next year, because they're the ones getting hit the hardest with this.
There's no question that's going to happen. I mean, look, Biden still has probably 85 to 90% support of the Democrats. He's got roughly 5% support of Republicans, 95% against him. But where he's really craters among independents. Independents are against him right now 2-1. And unless he, again, go back to what James Carville said. It's the economy, stupid. Unless they make some adjustments, it's going to be Katie bar the door for him. And
I think the Hispanic vote as well. I think there's a
absolutely
significant shift there. And we've talked about Texas already, these border states. Again, I have a friend down in McAllen, Texas. I get reports from him all the time of what's happening down there. And again, the Hispanic population isn't monolithic.
No, absolutely not.
My first time I went to in college was I went to New Mexico State University in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and so that was in 1968. And so the Hispanic population has been vibrant through the Southwest for many decades, and they're beginning to see what the problem is with this rush through the border and through their property and devaluing home prices, and you can go down the list with it all. They're getting fed up with this whole thing, and I think this dramatic shift on the Hispanic population is going to be a real wake-up call to the Democrats next year.
There's no question about it. It's happening all across the country. And look, Hispanic Americans want to see border protections just like any other American does. So, I mean, they are going to pay a price for this. Hey, let's shift subjects away from the economy for a minute, Gary, and talk about, the elephant in the room issue that was before the Supreme Court yesterday, and that is the Mississippi case, which limits abortion to happen in the first 15 weeks of a pregnancy. A lot of commentary on the left, on the right. How do you see, you heard the arguments yesterday. It appears that there's at least 5 justices sort of based on the questions that they asked. And again, you never want to handicap the Supreme Court. You'll be wrong more times than not. But it does appear there's at least 5 justices, Gary. Looks like they're trending towards supporting Mississippi.
Well, I think the Supreme Court aggravates me, especially on the abortion issue. I mean, they're dancing around the edges of this particular policy, and no one ever really talks about the life issue here. And also, we've had since 1973 about 60 million abortions and taking place in the United States. And this is not that draconian of a position that Mississippi is taking. I saw one commentator said, what do you expect from Mississippi? They supported slavery, their discrimination, segregation, and so forth. And yet the black community, Jesse Jackson once called abortion black genocide.
Yep.
And the laws for against abortion, you got to remember that the black community suffers with this as well. And this idea of just calling this something, this is the reinstitution of slavery and segregation and so forth, is preposterous. It's just amazing the arguments that are being presented here. It's going to be interesting to see what the justices do. As you know, a lot of times the questions that the justices ask aren't necessarily an indicator of how they're going to vote. They may try to punt on this and say, look, this is something for the states to determine. This is something for Congress to determine. Why is it that the Supreme Court should be making this decision? Hey, I'm all for that. I'm saying throw it into the lap of the people who are elected to office and let the people make a decision of what they want to do with those people. Once you throw this into the Supreme Court, 5 people make a decision, 5 unelected people make a decision for 330 million people. I want Congress to be responsible for this decision so that the people can make a determination of what they want to do with it.
Yeah, hard to argue that point, Gary, and maybe that's what it ultimately will come down to. A lot of people on the left, again, they're brainless people. They all go into their cocoons. I mean, Clarence Thomas asked some questions yesterday about, what are we arguing about? Where is this in the Constitution? They couldn't even answer it. So again, the decision is going to come down in June or July of 2022. There was a lot of intimidation tactics going on. A lot of people saying, well, this is the end of it. No, it's not. I mean, let's not prejudge what the Supreme Court's going to do. Let's let it play itself out. Come June, July of 2022, when a final decision comes down, then we'll have something to argue about. I concur with what you just said there. I think that's a good point. Let's shift subjects again, Gary. The Biden administration is frankly under a lot of pressure right now. You've got the new Omicron variant of COVID. Biden has extended the requirement to wear masks on airplanes, trains, buses, etc. Okay. We've lived with that. I guess we can deal with that until March of 2022. That's not going to change. But they're plowing full steam ahead with these vaccine mandates. Gary, this is going to be a flashpoint. There are a lot of people just dead set against this, and yet the Biden administration's plowing ahead with it, and the American public seem like, hey, we just want to get on with our lives. Okay, there's a variant. Yeah, we've dealt with them before. We'll deal with this one again. No one really knows, despite what some people claim, how strong or how weak this variant's going to be.
There's always a new variant. We're at the Omicron letter in the Greek alphabet. I mean, come on here. I mean, Delta's, where in the world were we with Delta? Here we're at Omicron already. We don't know with this. And they found one example, I think, in California. The South Africans are upset by all this. Now we're finding out that this is probably originated in Europe. And yet here you have the Biden administration, travel restrictions in South Africa. Yet when Trump was in power and instituting travel restrictions, he was a racist, a xenophobe.
Right.
Again, this is the most political medical emergency we've ever had in the United States. It's my understanding, and what I've read about this Omicron is that if the conditions are very mild, and it's like the flu. Like I've had the flu for the last 2 weeks. It's been a very mild thing. I'm just about over it. Now we need to let this type of thing just work its way through the system. Still take precautions. People want to take precautions. People want to get a booster. Go and get a booster. If you want to wear a mask, wear a mask. But you're right. It's time that we move on. We want to live our lives.
Right.
Fortunately, I'm in a state, and you're periodically in a state where sanity is prevailing on the whole COVID mess.
Yeah, and it's that way in Florida too. I mean, in a lot of states, they're doing the right thing. And honest to goodness, even out here in California, outside of LA County, I mean, we're not in LA County, we're in Orange County. It's pretty reasonable out here. I mean, so I think people are accepting the fact that coronavirus is never going to be eradicated. It's going to be with us. We have to learn how to live with it. And Fauci pretty much admitted that over the weekend. So one thing that's a little concerning, though, boy, in Europe, they're treating it different, Gary. I mean, Austria is considering mandatory jabs for all its citizens. 55% of the people approve of that policy. And that seems to be sweeping Europe way more, obviously, than happening here in the U.S.
Did you see the Jim Cramer rant?
I heard about it. I didn't see it.
I mean, wanting to call the military in to force people to get the shot.
I think Jim's a little bit over his skis on this one. I tend to agree with Jim on a lot of things. I watch him a lot. Good guy. No, I'm not on his page at all. Look, would I like to see people vaccinated? Yes, but look, if someone's had COVID, they have the antibodies, they have the immune system. I'm not the. Again, none of these doctors, they're all over the map on what's the right thing to do. But one thing is happening, more and more Americans are getting vaccinated. They are getting their boosters. Some are electing not to get vaccinated. That's their right. I mean, you don't have there's nothing in the Constitution that requires you to, take a jab, okay? Best I can tell. But Biden has stopped short of mandating it for everybody, and I don't think he's going to go there. But there's going to be a lot of workers who are just going to lose their jobs and quit because they don't want to be vaccinated.
Right. Yeah. But hasn't the number of the courts have shot down these?
They did. Yeah. The courts have shot down the vaccine mandates. The crazy thing is the Biden administration is going to appeal it. Again, they'll lose the appeals, I think, because of the constitutional aspect of it. But look, Biden really doesn't have anything else to run on. Part of the reason he was elected was people thought, well, okay, he's going to help us, bring an end to this coronavirus. Well, it hadn't happened. I mean, it's as bad now as it was when he first took office. People are realizing Trump's team did a damn good job of what they had to work with. We know a whole lot more now than we ever did before. And look, Biden's approval rating, he's underwater even on how he handles coronavirus and all the variants.
Yeah, I think he's below. I think he's in the mid 30s at this
well,
point.
His overall approval rating is between 36-40%, but on coronavirus, that was his strong suit. He's at 46% approval rating on how he handles that, and that's his best number of anything. So this administration is going to go all in, and I don't know, Gary. I don't think this is. If I was advising the president, I'd be focused on the economics, not as much, on mandates.
Yeah, in the end, you're right. It is the economy's stupid, and that's what people see on a daily basis. They're walking around without masks and they feel
Right.
okay, but when they have to spend more money or they can't get this or get that, pay more gas, prices at the gas pump, driving to work every day, that is central on their minds at this particular point in time.
Let's talk about two other sort of one local, one international issue. The border situation, Gary, no improvement there. Biden has now acknowledged they have to agree to the keep them in Mexico policy. Stay in Mexico until you get your court hearing. But nonetheless, 5,000 migrant unaccompanied children were released into the U.S. this month, in the month of November, previous month. 13,000 more are pending. Now, these obviously, again, it's a failure of policy, and you got to do something with these kids. And, it just, everything they do down there, nothing seems to work. And whether it's, basically we got to have the state of Texas come in, utilizing the Texas Rangers, Texas National Guard, to help protect Texans down along that border. It's crazy.
I still want to know, where are all these people going? I mean, I've heard that they've flown thousands of people into Florida.
They're all over the country, Gary. I mean, I don't know what the plan is, but I hear anecdotal things from, nighttime flights into cities. I mean, there's some people in Florida, because Florida's got a large segment of that population. But you have to be sponsored. These unaccompanied minors have to get sponsorship, from what I understand. So I don't know, but it's a mess. And again, when a guy like Mayorkas in charge of a DHS secretary who basically has an open border policy, I don't see any progress being made here. And I'm optimistic the Senate parliamentarian will take the amnesty piece out of that crazy budget reconciliation bill. Democrats are pressuring her, but again, it's come out twice. Hopefully it comes out for a third time, because basically the Democrats are trying to get 6.5 million people parole and a path toward citizenship through amnesty. Second thing, Gary, and this is really, again, you and I have talked about this. What started Biden's downfall was his Afghanistan debacle. Well, now we have word coming out that Taliban is executing Afghans who worked with the coalition. No surprise that was going to happen. And what does the U.S. do? They go, well, we're deeply concerned. Yeah, it's great for you to be deeply concerned, but the people that helped us are getting killed.
Well, there was one good story with this. I don't know if you saw the teenage footballers who ended up escaping from Afghanistan, and now I think they're in Great Britain at the moment. And again, a private organization, and actually Kim Kardashian helped with the transportation of these young Afghan girls who were soccer players, up and coming soccer players, to get out of the country and to get them into Great Britain. And we're probably not hearing all of these stories, probably to keep it quiet so the Taliban doesn't catch on as to what's going on. But this reminds me a little bit of Perot, who went in and got his people out. But again, it is just shocking how indifferent the Biden administration is to what has happened in Afghanistan. And of course, they're getting away with it for the most part because the media is protecting Biden on this particular story.
I think President Trump had it right when he said, and as numerous commentators have said on the right, if you didn't know any better, you would think Biden is deliberately trying to screw this country up. I mean, everything this guy touches, from Afghanistan to the border, crime, inflation, it just turns into a debacle. I don't know. I can't think of one thing that the guy's doing right. Speaking of crime, oh my God. Gary, did you see what's going on in San Francisco? Union Square? I've been there numerous times. It's a really nice high-end part, right in the middle of the city. That's where all your high-end stores are. You know what? Not anymore. They're boarding up their storefronts, because that's where the smash and grabs have taken place.
Right, yeah.
Boarding up their storefronts, and now they have armed guards out in front of their stores. This at a time, Plywood Enforcement, when it seems like Democrats are trying to protect the criminals instead of the victims.
Well, we're beginning to see more and more of this. The event that took place with the the SUV, this driver who had been arrested numerous times on some really, really bad criminal cases. And he's let out on bail. You have this fellow in Florida who allegedly killed this 14-year-old boy on a bicycle.
Yeah.
You're beginning to see these are career politicians doing this. And then when you have these...
You mean career criminals, not career politicians.
Career criminals. And then you have, the state attorney general, if they don't steal over $800, well, there's no bail is necessary. We won't even worry about it. And so the criminals get bolder and bolder and bolder and figure that no one's going to do anything about this. And here we go. And then, when they come to your neighborhood, then you'll start, crying about it. But again, this is, San Francisco, they're going where the money is. They're going where the merchandise is, and they're going where the liberal policies are.
Yeah, and what's really frustrating about all this, you have major hype when Kyle Rittenhouse is on trial, and then you had the Ahmaud Arbery case. But when you have a situation where an African-American man drives a truck into a Christmas parade, clearly a terrorist attack, the media downplays it. And here you have and I don't want to talk too much, the Florida case is sort of new, but here you have a 14-year-old kid, white guy, killed by a homeless black guy, stabbed the kid. And, what the hell is this guy who's living down in Miami coming up to Palm Beach Gardens and he kills somebody? And he had a criminal record the length of your arm. I mean, media doesn't want to talk about these things. It gets exposed because the media is a bunch of leftists in this country. And if it doesn't fit their agenda of white man bad, black man good, they just won't cover the stuff. Look at this crap coming out of Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter comes out, the head of the organization, and says, you know what? We want people to buy from black-only businesses. We do not want to have any blacks buy from any white-owned businesses. Well, who the hell is this asshole to talk about where people should spend their money? Imagine if a white guy stood up and said, well, we don't want any white people to buy any from any black-owned businesses. He'd be tarred and feathered out of town. And yet the BLM guy actually says this stuff. Does the media question him? No.
And here's the thing, Mark. A lot of these white business owners are probably, their inventory, much of it may come from actually other black companies out there. You don't know who you're actually buying from.
Oh, no question.
So that ends up hurting people. And then in these various neighborhoods where there are a lot of white companies within these neighborhoods, black people and white people, Hispanic people shop in these places. It's a service for them all. You're right. The idea of hypocrisy and double standards, those two statements are out the window. They mean nothing anymore.
I agree.
And so we're left here with a complete division in our nation. The idea, Obama was supposed to come in and be the unifier. Biden came in and said he was going to unify it. We're being pushed in terms of more and more division in our culture by the left, and
right.
Those of us on the right, I really believe we are in reconciliation mode almost all of the time, trying to work with anybody that we can.
Absolutely.
And we're being pushed by the other side in order to create this division in our country that's going to tear our nation apart.
Well, and it's the left wing driving this division, because you've got people most Americans, whether you're center left, center right, or the right, these race relation issues get blown up way out of proportion because it fits a media narrative, and the Democratic Party thinks it fits their narrative. I got news for you. In 2022, they're going to have a big surprise. And again, I'm going to go back to this BLM garbage again. When BLM is out trying to raise the $5 million for this terrorist up in Wisconsin who killed, at last count, 6 people in the Christmas parade. Who in their right mind would want to do something like that? And yet some knucklehead from BLM's out there doing it. Anyhow, let me move on, because that stuff, it just infuriates you when you got people all across the country working in harmony together, and again, outside the far left, race relations in this country were very good prior to Biden becoming president. Now it just seems like they're deliberately trying to make it worse. All right, a couple interesting, let's talk politics for just a minute here, Gary. In your state of Georgia, Stacey Abrams announced yesterday that she's going to make a second run for governor. And right now, give us your perspective. Is Brian Kemp going to be the opponent again? Is it going to be a rematch, or will the Republicans bloody each other up in the primary and pave the way for Stacey Abrams to become governor of Georgia?
I haven't seen any competition yet for Kemp, and I don't know who it would be. But I think Kemp got himself in a lot of trouble, and the Republican Party here in Georgia got themselves in a lot of trouble because they kind of dismissed the voter problem that we were having, how easy it was to cast a vote, whether you had ID or not. That was a reality. It hit hard. And as a result of that, we ended up getting 2 Democrat senators. I think, although one of the senators, I think Warnock, will be up again in 2022.
He's running against Herschel Walker, right?
Yeah, I think most Georgians, conservatives in Georgia, Republicans in Georgia are. I think they're more aware of the radicalness of Stacey Abrams and what she represents. I'm feeling fairly confident that the Republicans will do well. It may be an actual blowout in Georgia for the Republicans, but you're right. There's typically what happens is, and we're already seeing it at the congressional level with a lot of these Republican women, attacking one another, which does nothing for the Republican Party, does great harm. Right. That we need to be unified when 2022 comes along, because the left is going to be out in full force in order to try to get Stacey Abrams elected.
No question about it. And the Republicans have to be unified. We don't want to have the debacle of what happened when Ossoff and Warnock got elected because Republicans stayed home. Can't have that coming up in the next governor's race. Hey, in a Senate race, a well-known celebrity, Dr. Mehmet Oz, is running for the Republican nomination for Senate in Pennsylvania. Any thoughts on that one, Gary?
Well, my wife's been following that, and I was kind of surprised that Dr. Oz was fundamentally a Republican. I don't know how conservative he really is, and so it's going to be interesting to see how that works out. Pennsylvania, other than the Pittsburgh and Harrisburg and Philadelphia, is a fairly conservative state. And maybe with a good name recognition. I don't know who was.
He's replacing Pat Toomey, who retired.
Oh well, it seems to me almost anybody replacing Toomey would be a good thing. We'll just have to wait and see. Don't know enough about his political views, but I understand he was a Trump supporter. So we'll see.
We'll see. Charlie Baker, a 2-term Republican governor of Massachusetts, nonetheless, decided not to seek a third term. Scuttlebutt has it that his issue would have been in a primary, not the general election. The guy's got a very high approval ratio in a blue state. That sort of took me by surprise when he decided not to go for a third term.
Yeah, I mean, it's Massachusetts. I don't know. I'm not sure it makes that much of a difference if a guy with the R after his name is governor.
No, but my point in bringing it up, there's not a whole lot of R's in high political office in the Northeast.
Right.
So, he was supposedly, again, I don't follow internal Massachusetts politics a lot, but as a blue state and a Republican governor, that's sort of an oxymoron. But after we saw New Jersey, where we only lost by 2 points there, it could have happened. All right, a couple other things politically. Our esteemed vice president, 3 more staffers and their communication staff have left. One was a high profile, Simone Sanders used to run Bernie Sanders' communications. That's now 4 people off her staff that have left, Gary, within the past week. Maybe all that trouble you were hearing about, between Biden and Harris, maybe it's real, given that 4 people just quit.
What are they going to do with her? They can't get rid of her. I heard some scuttlebutt about her putting her on the Supreme Court.
No, they can't get rid of her. She's elected. She was elected vice president. I think the rift is real. I saw a little blurb that, in Biden's press conference the other day where he had Fauci there, they sort of tilted the camera where she would not be in any of the scenes. So I don't know if it's real or not. It's Democratic infighting at the highest levels. But, again, Biden got what he deserved. When he picked someone who got 0 votes in the Democratic primary, when he had plenty of other candidates he could have picked. Amy Klobuchar, well qualified. Cory Booker, well qualified. I mean, he had choices, but the far left of his party wanted Kamala Harris, and he succumbed to it, and now he's paying the price for it. So
I'll tell you, those in the minority community out here better take notice of this. Look, she was picked because of her race and because of her color, and this is the way the left works. And the people need to understand this. You are not really in their purview. They only use you to get into political office, and once they're in office, you're just a pawn. They're going to use you in the next election. The time is to get out of the Democrat Party, help us in the Republican Party to build it back up again and turn it back to a constitutional republic the way it was meant to be.
Agreed 100%. Hey, two other closing pieces. We got a couple minutes left. Chris Cuomo, obviously it's late news now, but Cuomo was temporarily suspended at CNN for doing what everybody in the media knew he was doing, helping his brother, which wasn't right. It even embarrassed some on-air CNN personalities. And on the political front, again, nobody's talking about this, Gary, but in a recent credible poll, hypothetical matchup, Trump versus Biden 2024. I know we got a long way to go, folks, but we'll tease it anyhow at the end of the week. Trump's up by 5 points on Biden at this point in the game. Any thoughts on that this way early in the race, Gary?
Yeah, I think it is way too early. And I think as we get closer to 2024, you're going to find a lot of Republicans, opposing Trump. So it's not going to be a unified party.
Right.
Of course, if Trump ran again, I'd certainly, vote for him. And I don't know who the Republicans who would put up against him. The last thing we need is infighting among Republicans with an election that we should win handily in 2024.
Well, my thoughts are always the same. Let's blow them out in 2022, take back the House, have Kevin McCarthy be Speaker of the House, hopefully pick up 2 or 3 Senate seats, get rid of these tyrannical Democrats that Schumer's trying to lead us down the wrong path, and then we can focus on 2024 after that. I think there's some great potential Republican candidates in 2024. I'll name a couple of my favorites, Mike Pompeo and Tom Cotton. Love Ted Cruz, not sure he can get elected, but I think Pompeo and Cotton would be great. And there's a handful of others that could run. Kristi Noem, Ron DeSantis, he's governor of Florida, great guy. I mean, just those 4 or 5 names right there, I think would all be terrific candidates, but we'll see. Gary, closing thoughts, close it out here heading on the weekend for us.
Well, again, I think we're beginning to see the consistency of the Democrat Party and what it brings to the table, and there's nothing that the leftist media can do to cover all of it up. And the flip side of all this is that a lot of Americans are finally getting fed up and speaking up and acting up enough to make some changes, at least at the local level. And I think that bodes well for this upcoming election. But I think it also bodes well just for the nature of the nation. People are beginning to see that personal responsibility and family life and education and so forth are oftentimes the true keys to what makes a nation great.
I couldn't agree with you more, Gary. Great parting thoughts. My final thoughts are this, folks. I want everybody to have a great December. Hopefully Joe Manchin hangs in there and they whittle down this disastrous Build Back Better bill. Hopefully it can get delayed until sometime in 2022. Manchin's right. We need to see if we can get inflation under control. This country does not need to spend $1.75 trillion on boondoggle programs on top of the money we've already spent because we're so far in debt right now. But good things, will happen. Hopefully, the Biden administration can get half a brain in their head about what's going on economically and do the right things. And maybe they'll get some common sense. In the meantime, the stock market's up 500 points today, rebounding from yesterday's debacle. And we're very optimistic heading into 2022 because once the Republicans take back the House and the Senate, all those horrific, bad Democratic policies will go on the ash heap of history. Folks, stay safe. Gary, thanks again for joining me today. We've had a terrific week, folks. We'll be back on Monday. See you then. And enjoy college football over the weekend.